and go.
Hey, they've been friends going on 20 years and now stepping into one of the most dangerous behaviors of a lifetime, having an opinion and openly talking about it on the internet. It's Pinche and The Gringo.
And we're back.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. We're going to be all over the place today. There's a lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah, there's so much happening, so much that has happened. But it's definitely, I think we're going to be a little all over the place just trying to figure out where we want to run with. But one of the things I guess we want to kind of chip off at the first before we go into our bigger topic is just voting Texas. So if you're a Texas voter, what's next and what's on the rest of the year for 2020? So at some point we'll do another one, because when we get into November, we don't just have pick your favorite idiot for the White House on the ballot. We're going to have a bunch more stuff on there.
Yeah.
So as we get farther into this summer, we'll bring you guys a kind of, Vince and I are talking that we're going to cover how you and I vote, how we look at the issues and how we look at the people, and then how we look at how they align. Now, we're not going to sit here and go down the ballot and say, I'm voting for Bob Q. Public, John Smith, and Jane Doe. No, but we'll give you some ideas of how we make our decisions.
Right. And understanding the topics and what they're about.
Yeah, and especially trying to avoid the how would we say it? Would we say it public or civil servant shenanigans when it comes to writing out a proposition that makes you look at it and go, hell no, I ain't voting for that. But in reality, you need to go yes. So
yeah.
we'll revisit that one for sure. Because actually, I think in the time that I've been voting, I've run into it probably 3 times now.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, probably twice in a state-wide election and once probably local.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll bring that topic up. But one of the things we wanted to point out is some of the places that we go when we kind of dig in. And obviously for us, we're in Texas and our county stuff. You can go directly, just look at your counties, just typing your county plus voting, and you're going to get to their voting location and their voting page. So for us, as far as registration and voting is pretty easy, especially if you've got your, is it still your driver's license? You can do the register to vote when you apply for your driver's license?
When your driver's license.
That's one route, and then you have the ability of a mail-in request to do that registration. I'm trying to look at the true and accurate things before I just talk out of another orifice. But essentially what
we're giving you accurate information here on Pinche and the Gringo.
Facts. That's about facts.
As we read them right now on the internet.
Directly read facts from the internet. You caught them here and live. So July 24th, originally.
And where are we taking this from?
I'm pulling it directly from the bear.org, BAXAR.org elections department. I found some other resources, obviously just looking around the net going, hey, what else is on the docket for this year? What else are we voting in? And essentially for Texas, there's the primary runoff, which was originally May 26th, but COVID, I'm assuming, is probably the reason for it. Pushes it out to now July 14th for the primary runoff date, which is where Texas is actually kind of stupid, though. The fact that, where did I pull this from? So during the primary election, more than 2 people are in a race. Candidate must receive 50% plus 1 of the vote. If that doesn't happen, the top 2 vote-getting candidates head into a runoff election, usually on May 26th. For this year, it'll be July 14th. Not a lot of offices that actually go into that. Now, we're considered an open primary state, which is kind of a crock, because we're really not, because you do have to declare a party when you vote in the primary. And if you voted in that primary, you can only vote in the runoff primary for that same party. So if you voted Republican in the primary, you're voting in the runoff, you have to vote in the Republican. You wouldn't be able to jump over to a Democrat side or vice versa. That being said, though, is if you didn't vote at all in the primary, you can vote either way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to consider. A lot of people are like, well, I didn't vote in the primary and there's a runoff coming and I'm interested in it, but I can't vote because I didn't vote in the primary. That's not true. You can vote. And I believe we still have there's one more late date coming up to still be able to register for voting. So the runoff ballot for July 14th, we have some sample ballots up there, predominantly around county offices, a state office, and one federal, a senator. On the Democratic side, Democrat side, I don't know why I said Democratic. On the Republican side, and the Democrats is one we just covered, but on the Republicans, United States Representative for District 20, District 23, and District 35, obviously you're only voting if you're within those districts. There is a state board of education for District 5, and then there are items for the county commissioner and some other pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But so we don't have a lot going on, but that can always change. We've seen other types of elections or ballots or other pieces that'll get on to a ballot. But if this stuff is done now, you don't have to worry about it when you get into October. The key date, as we look towards a hellish November, the actual election day is November 3rd, 2020. Deadline for new voter registration, that was for the primary. Monday, October 5th. The deadline for new voter registration for the Texas election. Yeah, there we go. Is Monday, October 5th of 2020. The first day to apply for a ballot by mail, Wednesday, January 1st, all the way throughout to November. It's weird where adults and voting is still a cluster.
It always has been.
Yeah. Well, did you see Georgia? Georgia's recent, so this is just going a couple of days ago, and I know we have some other topics, but actually this plays right into it. And there's a lot of talk about voter suppression because a lot of voting locations for especially around Atlanta were actually closed down, and they tried to consolidate those into certain areas. And then consolidating those into certain areas, they switched over to a newer type of voting machine. The voting machine was kind of as bad as some of the training we've worked on, designed, and deployed in cases where it's like, hey, there's a PDF. You got an hour, polls open, good luck. And people stood in line for hours. And some of them are like the rest of us, we're human beings. We can't sit here for 12 hours. Most of us are sitting here squirting blood at an ER, and we're not going to sit around for 12 hours. We're going to get up and put some duct tape on it and leave. And you want people to sit around for that long to go in and place a vote for people we usually don't really like in the first place. We're only voting in the hopes that they're not going to screw up the governmental functions for our state or our local government.
Right. So what are your views on fingerprinting?
Fingerprinting for voting registration?
Yeah. Like biometric fingerprinting.
Oh yeah, I'd have to think long and hard on that because I'm kind of against it.
Yeah. But I think that would, because you could like do that from home. If everybody had a biometric and you wanted to vote online at home, then you could do that.
Why not? The last time we had a biometric system implemented, and the first words out of my mouth is like, if it works on my machine, it won't work for anybody else's. And it didn't work for anybody else, but I could.
Yeah, I remember that. But it's changed. It's
has
changed
it really
since then.
Changed?
It's better now.
What else do we utilize our thumbprints for?
Opening up your phone. You could install an app on your phone. Use your fingerprint to vote.
What else do we use it for? We use it for our DMV.
Yeah.
Texas does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a red scan, right? So
yeah.
You're on. I mean, no matter what, you're already printed. We're on enough list as it is because we support 2A, and I mean, I own personal firearms responsibly. So I'm on those lists. I mean, there's enough identifiable things
Right.
That's a really good question, because what would be the against it? So 4, we're able to hopefully eliminate, not we can't eliminate, but drastically reduce the potential for voter fraud. Is that the key? What would be,
Yeah.
you think, the key driving factor?
How can you well, it would take a big thing to be able to fake somebody's fingerprint.
I've watched some action flicks, man. I'm just kidding. No.
But to do voter fraud at that scale, for it to make a difference?
Yeah, so in that aspect, if I'm trying to find some decent voter frauds, voter buying, vote intimidation, vote forgery. Got to dig into it a little bit more, at least on that aspect. The 4 is we think we're reducing or potentially making it very, very difficult for voter intimidation or voter fraud.
Right.
So we're just going to the population.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the cons to it, or the pushback to it, is citizens already look at their vote and go, yeah, I'm voting, but it doesn't really matter because some yahoo with an electoral vote's we run the scenario. I voted blue. I voted as a Democrat this year, and then Texas goes red. The hell did I vote for?
Yeah.
That I think is a position of a lot of Americans. So it's like, why am I going to get my thumb printed for additional detail to something that doesn't really add up?
Mm-hmm.
But now in state and local, it's a per vote count. We don't have electoral college crap at the state and local level. So that's definitely a benefit.
But if you look at it, why was the Electoral College created in the first place?
I didn't read my history books. Are you kidding?
So
I do recall, but I'm going to make you explain it.
Well, the Electoral College was created in the first place because not everybody was able to vote as easily. Not everybody was able to get there. So they needed a way to get a kind of consensus of what's out there. Now everybody is able to go and go vote because there's precincts all over the place. It's a lot easier than it was back in the day when it was created.
Yeah, it seems like at this point, because of technology at that point, that definitely makes sense.
But now we don't need that, so we can go by popular vote. But nobody's ever going to want that because they can never draw the lines the way they want them to be drawn.
Yeah,
Gerrymandering. That's the total thing behind the Electoral College, is gerrymandering.
Yeah, as they adjust to the different recreating the districts. Dude, I have seen some really weird lines drawn around counties. And as you start to look at some areas, I don't know if I've seen it much here in Central Texas, but I think we've seen reports of it and even some cases of it out in West Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And then others up on the East Coast. And it was specifically, it seemed like they were trying to draw either out by drawing very weird districts. They were either trying to draw out the minority vote or trying to disperse it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was either a way to make that the minority vote stronger, or totally just try and water it down.
Yeah.
And that's just, I mean, that stuff just boggles the hell out of me. It's like, we're going to draw our own districts. Nah. Let's do this crap like geography. There's a grid. Okay, that's a district. Done.
Let's change this every single election.
May the odds be ever in
I
your
was like,
favor.
oh,
Texas's district is.
that's looking a little blue there. We better change that. It's
Yeah,
looking
we
a
better
little
go ahead and
too
scrub that
red.
one a
Let's
little
change
bit.
that.
We're going for an even purple this year, guys. So
Yeah.
change that one altogether. Yeah, that's gonna be the ever contested thing that we'll probably never see in our lifetime. But hopefully, who knows, it'll change. The other is just if we tie that into his third party.
We need a big third party that's called the middle.
The middle.
Is that, yeah, we're the middle.
We're the middle.
How you doing?
How is it?
Everybody will vote for him. It's going to be the best of both sides.
Do you think the generation, our kids, and potentially the next, are disgusted enough with the two-party system to band together enough to go ahead and say, like, if we look along Bernie and Beto specifically, because there was a very large, and this could be the media bias, but there seemed to be a very large following amongst those two. And then you start to, and even Warren, and then you start to look at them being eliminated from the race because they weren't the establishment's favorites of the Democrats. And you wind
Right.
up with Biden, and you look along Warren, Beto, and Bernie supporters, and they all go, I'm not voting for that guy. And when they say that, that's not the answer. That's not them saying they're going to vote for Trump, obviously. They're saying, I'm not voting for that guy, which normally leads to, I'm not voting.
Right.
But the question is, do you think this might be this generation or the next generation strong enough to populate enough and go, you know what? Third party.
I think millennials are changing because they're the ones that need to vote because they haven't been voting in the past elections when they have been able to. But now they're looking at it as like, I can't believe we let this go for so long when we could have, instead of playing a joke and voting for Harambe, that we go through and actually vote for somebody that could win. Because, and this is what I keep telling my kids. I was like, you have to pick the lesser of the two evils. It's unfortunate, but that's what you have to do.
I can't do it. I can't tell them now, and I haven't. And I've always.
I don't tell them which one it is. They have to determine that for themselves.
No. Everybody looks at two turds the different ways. I mean,
Yeah.
we could be looking at the same piles of crap, but we both view them differently. And for me, though, it's like I can't. I've never told my kids vote for the shiniest piece of crap. Vote for whoever sucks the least in your eyes.
They're politicians, though.
Huh?
They're politicians.
Right, but I mean that's what I mean is I don't tell them to vote for the worst of the better of the worst. I tell them to dig in and go, okay, these guys, all of them are on the same talking points. So look at the talking points. Put yourself in your shoes now on those talking points. How do I feel about this now? 5 years from now, when this schmuck may still be in office, how would I want this to be occurring? Is this still the same? Is this topic or running platform they're on this specific item?
But there's never going to be a perfect politician.
No,
Never.
but I mean, it, and this I hear arguments of as well, is I could pick a politician, I could pick who's going to get my check in the box based on one issue. I can go that granular and go, well, this is the one that I'm going to hang my hat on, and I'm voting for option B or whatever, whoever may be at that point. But I'm looking at the most topics that directly affect me and how I feel they affect the world and how I would like to see the world. And there's one of them leans heavier than the other in that direction. And their actions in their pastime, which is difficult, is you have to do your own research. right now, millennials and younger voters and inexperienced voters, not just pointing at millennials, let's just say younger voters and experienced voters and new voters, a lot of the information that they're going to the ballot box with is what they pull off of the paid for by some scumbag political action committee,
Right.
or my name is politician and I support this stupidly well-written marketing message.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was specifically targeted to my Facebook group and it said all the magic and pretty words that it pulled out of the algorithm, so I'm voting for that idiot. And they're not looking back into the history of the politicians' personal life and public life and their actions and going, he's saying a lot, but for a long time he's been showing something different.
Mm-hmm.
So just because they're on that talking point doesn't mean you can trust that they're going to step into office and execute it.
Right.
So that's
Right.
where it's like, I can't
as
do the best of
been
the
the
worst.
majority of our presidents. But when you go in as president, people think they have more power than they actually have. And I think some presidents have taken more power than they should have. But it's the government as a whole.
That's true. I mean, I think it's like, dude, congratulations, Mr. President. Here's the football and all that stuff you said you were going to do. Yeah, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Please come in. Let's have a talk about the things you really can do and the puppet masters who pull your strings.
Yeah.
This way, please. I'm sure there's a massive rude awakening around it because I mean we've worked for small businesses and we've worked for some very large companies,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that the ability to change direction in a small company, although is a little shorter in time to happen, it is still a massive undertaking.
Right.
And then for a large organization, it's phenomenally huge undertaking and involvement of people and those with the right decisions, because the crowd at the bottom of the stadium can be yelling what you need to be do at the top, but the top's not going to hear it.
Right.
And then by the time they do hear it and start to try and adjust, the bottom is screaming something new.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of the history of large organization action and changing of
They
direction.
just
So
take a
think of it
lot
in the
longer to
government.
do it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when we look into the government, it's that same thing. So it's as we go back to our voting, we've talked about next votes coming up is we have something for state and we have something for national, but we need to be voting at the people we need to be voting at the bottom of the stadium so they can scream upwards to the top.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just go and vote for some schmuck at the top and assume he's doing all the stuff.
But you still have to vote for somebody.
Yeah, you got to vote for somebody. And I prefer somebody real. I don't think I've ever.
But that's why I keep saying is like you have to pick the lesser of the two evils because they're both evil.
Right, but you don't
You
have
have
to
to
pick
pick the
the
one
lesser of
that's-
the two. There's always a third party option. There's a third party option on every single ballot.
Then that gives a vote to somebody that you absolutely do not want.
I can't get behind that.
You take that away from somebody. I would have to.
Right.
But
if
that's-
I'm taking
but that's-
it from one, I'm taking it from the other. There's no, well, you voted third party, so you gave it to so and so. No, I didn't. I took the vote away from both of them.
But a third party won't win. Not
But
president.
third party won't
Not
win
president.
if you don't keep voting for them. That's what I'm saying. So that's where I'm looking at it. Do you feel that within our current two generations, so our kids and their kids, are we to that point where they could actually make the numbers happen?
Society is not smart enough to vote for a third party. They should be. It's smarter to vote for a third party.
So let's look at it the other end. So not the people casting the votes, but the ones receiving it. Have we really had a candidate that would be worthy of office?
Not.
So would we? So now we'd just be going to three-turd Monty every presidential election. Hey, who's going to be president? Is it under this one or this one? And
because
we'd just
even when
be
you
picking
look at
from
the
three.
libertarian, even when you look at the libertarians, they're not much better.
Oh man, I start to look up at libertarians and I'm like, it's cool with this, cool with that, it's all right with that. What? Once Texas to secede from the Union, damn, they were so close. I didn't know. I'm glad they included the psych eval because this person's crazy. So, would we just be switching?
I actually wrote a government paper in college about Texas seceding.
And that's what the
That was for it.
for it.
That was for it.
Trust me, I'm stupidly for
and
it.
I got
it's like
A on that paper.
I have to bust that thing out and put it back in as your thesis or something. I mean that's a whole nother topic, but
that's the thing. Texas can be its own country if it wanted to be. We have our own grid.
oh yeah, we're fairly autonomous with a seaport option, but we are
if we wanted to. I don't know that it's a good thing. I don't think I want complete Texas control over everything, because then it's just red. We need the purple. We need the purple party. Purple party.
The purple party.
It's a purple party.
Purple people eater party.
Yes.
That could be totally done. I think that's gonna. I mean, that's what's gonna be is the current, regardless of anybody's political leanings, the current offerings on the table. We've said it before. 2016 was, man, it can't get worse than this, and 2020 is like, oh, really?
It can get this worse.
I could reach into this crowd of people and pluck the biggest a-hole from it and make them a Democratic candidate. And done. Oh man, God, what are we picking now? And then if we look at a lot of stuff is.
But look
at right now. How much of that stuff is affecting? Because look at who's in the White House and what he's doing, based on the events that are happening around us right now. Look at the one who's trying to take that seat. I'm not.
But here's the thing.
I
think this movement was going to come regardless. I think it came a little faster. It came a little faster because of who's in office right now.
That could definitely contribute. But I'm not going to say it's all in there. Like you were saying,
it's been coming for a long time.
Yeah.
I think it was
definitely poised.
It was finally the straw that broke the camel's back. It was too many all at once.
There's always been too many, but it's the.
You have Aubrey, you have Breonna Taylor, and then that's not even being covered right now, and nothing's happening to the guys that did that.
No, there's actually
not
seeing any movement on that yet either. And then so there's a lot of things. So that's perfect kind of a transition into one of the other more heavier topics we talked about, which is everybody's screaming it now is let's defund the police.
Yeah.
So is it?
This is a really
do this.
This is a really, 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 really bad name to call this thing.
Yeah.
Because when you hear defund that police, that means like it. What it is not removing all the money and getting rid of the police. That's not what it's doing. I actually think they initially titled it "Abolish Police."
Yeah, there was we've seen it a couple of different ways, and I think it just kind of comes from whoever the angle, whatever person's at the podium, and how they're deciding to present it.
All this is reappropriating funds to either education or social services and things like that.
I think people are saying defund because they really don't want to say regulate. Because if you say
Yeah.
regulate, there's just not a lot of movement on there. There are certain aspects of the police, no matter what, regardless of the incidents that are occurring and the good cop, bad cop arguments, all of that stuff. There's, if we do look around the world, need to pull more stats on it. But if we look around the world, police officers are trained at a much higher requirement than a lot of police officers are in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Longer educational time frames, wider variety of topics of knowledge versus just, can you shoot downrange a whole lot faster than somebody else?
Yeah.
And here's your takedown and here's your attack. So that is one aspect, but then the other is the people talking about, well, let's just get rid of them and go with kind of the I'm going to use the word in the wrong way for it, but the social justice aspect, which is like basically self-policing in some areas. And it's like, no, that doesn't, no, we've seen this. Actually, just dig back in history. The kind of self-policing thing was the stuff we saw in communist Red China. It's also what we saw in Germany. There was a lot of those things that defunding the police and essentially removing a barrier that would stop people from being able to move their own agendas forward was exactly what that was in historical aspect. At current, it's kind of like for me there's an aspect that police have reached the farthest extent of how far we can go before it's got to be pulled to a center. Like every time we've worked on something, you know how we've seen things over time in big projects where we go as far out on the limb as we can before the thing snaps and realize we have to pull it back because it starts to snap, and then we over pull back and we come all the way back to this foundational basis which is too weak, and we have to come back forward into that middle. So for me, this is way out on that limb, is the militarization of the police and the it's going to come off probably wrong, but the basically education of being brute thuggery in some cases, in the instances that they're put in, versus being trained. To be honest, I've never started a conversation with a cop by going, no, I'm not going to roll down my window, or no, I'm not going to show you this stuff. I don't start off with an adversarial conversation with a police officer because I see them as the same person. I see them as a human being in the same aspect with them, and they just happen to have a badge and they pulled me over. So we're going to go through this, however that works. But defund. I mean, who's already said they were doing it? Was it Minneapolis? The city council's like, that's it. We're defunding the police and we're going into it. But even that, I think there was a little. I'll look to it. But what are your opinions around it? Let me look at the Minneapolis
here's the one thing.
thing while you're
it's not eliminating police. It's just not giving them the additional resources or hiring on additional police. They'll replace what they lose, but they're not going to bring on more to take care of something that might happen, because police are being asked to do way more than they were 50 years ago.
Yeah, you gotta. Have you ever looked at SAPD's police blotter? You'd be surprised, man, the volume of the calls that these guys handle, these men and women handle on a daily. And I mean, Dallas, think of Dallas in that aspect, and Houston. I mean, the volume of things that these folks handle, which is also why you hear of long response times and people being should be somewhat self-sufficient. But the police, it's not just the fact that we're looking at all these instances of what happened and going police brutality, and we're drawing a lot of those to the very front of the argument right now.
Yeah.
But there's another element here that nobody's paying attention to as much. If I look out my front door, I don't see a drug dealer walking down my street. If I go down the block, I don't see a drug dealer on my street. And I'm talking like the worst stereotypical bad action movie type inner city drug deal type setup. You know what I mean? So to paint the picture in that aspect, but also in the same thing around gang violence or neighborhood intimidation. Those things don't exist as much at the forefront. I'm not saying they don't exist, but they're not as obvious to normal people because the fact that there is a police presence. And in that mindset of my old days I did night security in my early 20s. I drove around parking lots all night, car dealers and stuff. And one of those car dealers, they're like, hey, nothing's happening. And we're like, yeah, it's because we're here. We're here from 6 p.m. until the gates open at 6 a.m. They're like, nah. Why don't y'all come on about 10 o'clock and then leave at 6? Okay. They signed the new contract and we warned them. And it was like maybe 30 days into the new contract, and my boss calls me in the morning and says, hey, did you notice anything funny? And I'm like, no. I'd walk around the lot and I'd check every single car, 1,000 cars or so, just drive around the lot, blinky light, security guard uniform, walk around, checking car doors, being able to write down, hey, you left a Charger unlocked or whatever. 5. It was 5 brand new Jeeps. Gone right off the lot. They had no idea until they'd taken inventory, and they'd been gone from a week after they changed the contract.
Wow.
We were back on 6 to 6 the very next day. All of those, I think, were recovered. Burnt hulks. They were all found off by Ingram Park Mall back in the den, and they were destroyed.
Devil's Den.
Destroyed. Yeah. So that's the other aspect here, is police presence in itself, not police action, but police presence in itself serves as a deterrent. And
police, an answer for that, police drones.
Drones?
It's Terminator style, come on.
Oh, man. I'm waiting for you to start trying to tell me how to use the 3 shells. That's like... Don't know about that one either, man. Do you know how many times that thing would go off if we had such an automated police thing? Patrick Nolan, you have been fined for use of the word. I would just be screwed. I would be so screwed. I'd have endless violation. That's the other thing, is robotic policing is probably a very good topic to jump in here, because if you start to defund the police and you're starting to pull physical officers off the street, because you're not actually removing the police element, you're just giving a visual blinding to those who want to hear it. Oh yeah, we defunded the police. We removed 200 officers from the street, and people are going to be like, yeah, they're defunding the police. They're pandering to my feelings. But in reality, what are they going to do on the opposite end of that to ensure that what police are doing, to ensure the result they have, the impact they have, the influence that they have, when they're not even physically present, still exist? Are we going to go to UK style facial recognition, camera, no privacy as soon as you walk out your door?
That's kind of invasive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's where else we would be. And I mean, a lot of this network's already being put in place even without our permission, just by going, oh yeah, that's for TxDOT stuff, and we're only going to do it on the highways. Well, then why the hell are you looking at my little podunk intersection? Why is the camera up there? So it's more cameras are out there.
Over San Antonio, we have like microphones out there that can listen for like gunshots.
Yeah, for triangulation.
That help police
purposes.
triangulation. That's something that I don't think many people know that we have out there.
I don't know if they work all that well, because my hood, some shots go off, dude. Shots go off in my hood, and I'm not seeing any cops flying in going, hey, detective, triangulate that shot.
That's because they shot those mics there.
They
found them. They found the mics.
Started picking them off of the telephone poles. Yeah, that makes sense. It's that there's a lot of stuff though that, if anything, let's hope that aside from everything that's happened and still happening. I mean, we can't say happened because what's occurring right now is still occurring, and things are still moving forward, and actions are being taken, and voices are being definitely said and heard. But let's hope that this turns a lot of the folks that are in here to beyond just that surface level of we're here to fight police brutality, defund the police, protest this nonstop. Well, what else are you doing to that? Are you looking at what your city's actual police department's internal affairs procedures are? Are you looking up police records to see if there are bad cops? And then is there any way of public complaint or public forum that you can say, hey, why does this dude have 62 infractions on his record and somehow he's still a cop?
Yeah.
What are those aspects for public things? And then what is the planning from your police commissioner? What are they looking to do in the next couple of years? What have they done so far? Have they actually benefited? If you looked at the crime stats from your previous police commissioner to your current police commissioner, has he really done the legwork? Have things actually changed? Right? Hopefully that thinking is what helps people with going to the ballot box, but also still make their voice heard.
I don't know. There's a lot of things you could do. And the majority of them are all technology based.
Yeah, and that's an odd comfort because that's an odd kind of area of comfort and discomfort. I think this is going to sound weird to say, but as an older generation, I am less likely to adopt or accept technology surveillance. I'm like vehemently against red light cameras, stuff like that. And
well, I mean, but isn't some of that kind of based off kind of like what we were taught in school, like reading 1984?
The fact that I look at our government as potentially trying to put in place some type of weird dystopian future? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been taught that. We've been taught that.
But it's like everything you're taught, you have to, you're the one who retains what you want to keep. I mean, am I thinking wrong in that? Maybe in a psychological aspect of human nature that someone could be taught something and they will, well, yeah, I guess so. I guess you could teach somebody some sort of edict or other type of directive, and they would just lock it into their soul, and that's the way it is, and they would carry it until they get kicked in the teeth by it, and maybe dogs. Maybe
it comes to education again. It's always anything that's wrong with this country or anything that's wrong with the political system is all based on. It can be corrected if you educate people. If you have people start thinking for themselves. I had a talk with my mom, and my mom leans right all the time. She leans red.
Okay.
She's a Republican.
Which side's right again? Which side's left again?
So I'm going to college, and she's telling me, "Oh, all those professors are just teaching you like left-wing stuff." I'm like, "No, they're not." I was like, "They're teaching us how to think, how to use our mind, how to come to our own conclusions. They're not telling me, oh, this is the right way to be." When have you been in any single college class that has told you which way to think?
No, not at all.
Never once.
Not at all. And I'm curious on maybe that just on an institutional thing, because I went to college much later in life than a lot of folks. I mean, a good majority of population, and I could be wrong here, but of most people who actually go through, let's just say 4-year university, do it straight out of college or straight out of high school. They're 18 years old. I was in my late 20s by the time I was getting back in, well, early 20s with my back surgery and all that stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
And for SAC, it was computer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But SAC's not teaching me anything. SAC is like, they're not trying to mold my young mind. They're like, hey, dude, you gotta retake algebra because you're an idiot, and you gotta complete your English one, and then you're gonna take C++ with so and so, and you're gonna take basic with so and so. And that's all it was. It was rote memorization and some study. When I went to UIW, even at much older, I look back now and critically think on my college time at UIW a whole lot better than I did at that time, even though I was much older.
Right.
But that's exactly what they were doing, was essentially every problem that we presented was presented in a way to make us critically think about the overall topic, not just be given one side of it and go there. But to add to that and to go into a next phase, I had a history professor, because I had to take American history, and the first thing he tells us is, we're going to go through the history book that we have. So I'm going to teach you guys the great white man's history, and then I'm going to tell you the damn truth. And the other thing that he did was, if it's on the quiz or it's on the test, I'll say it twice.
Mm-hmm.
So he said a lot of things twice, and that's what you took notes on. But it was how he did that he enlightened me on history from what we'd been taught to the other version that he had, and that made it interesting. So let's look ahead now, right? We have 35 kids in a classroom that's supposed to hold 25, and we have teachers who are already, and you're going to be able to speak to this understanding way more than I can.
Mm-hmm.
But we have teachers who are already maxed at their limit, who are having to hit data points as a measure of success versus a child's growth mentally, emotionally, as a measure of success.
Right.
And it's that same robotic mental, like just robotic training. Like, when did you learn to balance a checkbook? Simple things, right? Stuff that we're going now are like, oh yeah, simple stuff. Yeah, balance a checkbook and stuff. And our parents used to do it. Parents sitting there going through that register, and you're looking at it going, oh my God. They're like, go away. This is stressful enough. Those things don't get taught to us.
No.
And then it's like, hey, you have your first job. Here's your W-2. File taxes. What? How do I file taxes? Dad, how do I file taxes?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, go to TurboTax. I'll walk you through it.
Yeah.
How many of our kids out there who can't look into the void and go, hey, Dad, show me how to do my taxes?
Mm-hmm.
So as we start looking at, regardless of the conspiracy theories and the BS and it's a lie and whatever, if we look at COVID in the future, in lieu of the obviously Bill Gates funded microchip that we're all going to be injected with sometime in the next year. I say that jokingly.
I'm going to take that one.
Yeah, that sucker better have a good processor, man, or we're going to fight. If I don't have certain amounts of RAM and certain amounts of space, we're going to have a problem. But how do we go back to our kids being educated? How do our educators go back to being able to educate? And how do we change that measurement in the fact that schools can't fill those at the heads of the school can't keep lining the coffers by going, that's all right, just stuff 5 more kids in that science class, or stuff 10 more in that computer class that doesn't have enough computers for all the kids to use either. And you're looking at 35 kids in the classroom.
They need to stop teaching to the test and start teaching critical thinking, but to the ones that can critically think. Not everybody can think critically. And they need to go through and learn a trade.
Oh, gosh, that was pretty rough.
Well,
Dude,
I mean, unfortunately,
do you know where I started?
Where's that?
I
in
started
a trade.
Huh?
Yeah,
in a trade.
yeah, you started doing a trade.
I was a plumber.
But
I was
but can you critically think? Yes.
That's probably still up for debate. In every conversation I have, probably like, that guy's an idiot.
I
Or
mean,
not.
but right now, if you're to critically think, being in the trade industry, that's big money right now because nobody's doing it
Oh, absolutely.
anymore.
Working hard is not fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, I think there's the balance of both worlds. We need the trade ability. We need the knowledges that are gained from trades, along with the mental knowledge that's gained as well. And that this is where the it sounds weird. Bring back shop class.
Oh yeah.
Bring back home ec. So we did this. I'd like to see it spread out a little bit more, but at the middle school I went to, we did like a 6-week kind of time frame, right? 2 weeks was shop, 2 weeks was home ec, and it was you got everybody in there. You got the jocks in the Letterman's jacket, and it's like, okay, today we're working on a doily pattern. But that's still some type of skill set. That's still some type of knowledge that's there, whether you value it or not at that time. But I think there's an opportunity for an equal application of both the physical skill sets that come from trades. Because everybody looks at trades and they think trades is like swinging a hammer. Holy crap, dude, hell no. The amount of stuff you need to understand, the blueprint, measurement, distance, physical engineering, all of that stuff can grow from it. And then you need the critical thinking. But we also have the issues where a lot of our young people are probably afraid to voice an opinion. Because you just can't seem to have a critical opinion publicly anymore. Mm-hmm. I had a great prayer and spirituality class. When I heard I had to take that and I couldn't get out of it, I was looking for ways to. Can I take another class twice? Please don't. Why in the hell am I going to take this prayer and spirituality class? Prayer and spirituality gave me a deeper understanding of Muslim religion, which I had a very piss poor one at the time. Mm-hmm. So that education was great, and I was introduced to a practicing Muslim family. We talked about all sorts of things. And throughout my life, I think that's been the connection of stuff that has brought me out of ignorance to some form of enlightenment, is how much something you may think you dislike or disagree with, when you see another person who is on that side of that element, and you realize there's just no damn difference.
Yeah, and I've talked to these people. I was like, "Have you ever talked to a Muslim?" And they're like, "No, I would never talk to a Muslim." Then how would you know anything about them?
Yeah, you don't know anything. So even
but they're so quick to say, "Oh, they're gonna kill me in my sleep." Okay.
What's your justification for that again? I'm not hard pressing you for facts or anything, but if you could back
apparently so are the police.
Right. Yeah. Apparently that's an aspect too. But those classes, we need the education needs the dynamic fluidity to change. And in that aspect, not funneling children into one aspect of the world or another, but the broad application of a skill set. I'd love for us to be able to, and you probably have the better resource, so we should probably go have some tacos and beers and all have this conversation, is from an educator's point of view. What is that perfect system? Granted, no system's perfect. We know this stuff, right? But but
here's the thing. There's kids out there that are not going to learn stuff. No matter what you do, they're not going to learn it. So these kids keep getting pushed through the grades, not even learning how to manage their checkbook. Why not have classes of teaching how to manage your checkbook? how to grocery shop with $20 for a week, and that you have to learn how to make that last.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect of something that's not occurring, especially in the current educational environment, is you got to let people fail.
Oh, definitely.
If you're in the 5th grade for the second time, trust me, it's its own little education. The world has, in the span of a year and a summer, the world has moved on. And you're back in a previous grade. I don't think it's extremely I mean, at a lower grade level, it's less damaging on the long-term aspect, and there's a learning opportunity there. But as far as how impactful it is when you're in higher grades, it's vicious. I think it's viciously impactful. It's like, dude, you're sorry, man. You're in not sorry. You're in 7th grade again. Do your damn homework. And then if and that's not that simple. We know that, but
yeah, it's not that simple, because when you get into those ages where you go from 8th grade to 9th grade, there's a change in those children that is not as appropriate to have a person back. Like,
yeah.
if you should be in high school, if you're that age, you should be in high school, or you should be in some kind of like a trade school, trade high school that's learning a trade to do something. If you're not there to actually learn the stuff, but there's teaching stuff that is not usable too.
All right.
I was like, why are they teaching genetics, like basic genetics, in middle school?
I think that comes down to an understanding of science, and hopefully it's an igniter of a passion potentially. But there's definitely the alternative.
The only one that's going to be passionate for it is a select few. Nobody else cares about that. I wasn't taught genetics in middle school.
I was. Yeah, to some extent. I had a science teacher who figured out that I had a 3 was my current average in his class. That's how much screwing off I was doing. But I wasn't being a butt. I just wasn't doing anything. And then partway through the semester, as we're transitioning into higher stuff, he's like, well, I've either got to punt this kid out of my class, which he couldn't do, or I got to figure out how to let him play with a Bunsen burner and not be an issue. And he figured out, oh, well, kid behaves like a champ when we're at the Bunsen burners and we're doing stuff that takes procedure in this type of process. And so he turned my grade around, focusing me on individual projects and keeping me near fire was apparently his way of solving it. But that was the to me, that was
fire.
Just yeah, oh yeah, it would keep my good brain work. But that was the benefit of that educator, is he saw that and said, you know what, just let him play with fire. As long as he's back there working on chemicals and stuff, his work's getting done. He's doing homework. He's doing things. And then, but there was also I was actually that kid where you're exactly where you're at. You're not going to be able to stay here, but you ain't got your crap together to go to high school.
Right.
So we've created a whole entire different program at a tech school, which booted us off campus. I wasn't the only one. It happened to a couple of others as well. And we were punted out to a technical school where we were required to complete stuff just for our GED.
Right.
But we were moved into an adult environment. We were on an adult college campus. We were free to smoke without being fined, because most of us were smokers. We were 16, 17, whatever, but we all smoked. We wouldn't get harassed by the cops on campus smoking like we would if we were at the high school. We moved into an adult accepted environment. We went like half day, but it was an alternative swap. It's like, you're not going to get out of high school, not in this lifetime, so we're going to kick you to the other programs. So how do we do that here? Our alternative programs are like, prison, what? So where is that? What are the most successful school models currently, and why are they successful? And is their success only based on the fact that their cities are small and it's an anomaly?
Or
there's so many aspects.
Or they're so successful because they only keep the cream of the crop.
I've seen that too, where schools
Yeah.
just hunt out. Yeah. But that's the other thing. I think you and I had that conversation, or I read a story on it. You have a certain amount of the, I think this was the argument against, what are they called here? Not private schools. The,
Charter schools.
there we are. Now, wasn't that the key argument for charter schools, was the fact that they could go, kid's kind of a pain in the ass, punch him to the curb. So they can get rid of a kid anytime they want with no real justification or reasoning. The public school doesn't have that opportunity.
Right.
Which then forces them into that position.
Right.
So there's an overall structural change, not just an educational change that would need to occur.
Mm-hmm.
So how does it work? Because we know fining parents doesn't work. Charging
No.
that in itself creates a volatile home environment. Hey, you need to go to school. They're fining me $500 a day. Then you've got who knows else that could spawn from that.
But the only ones that are getting fined are the ones that can pay it.
I got nothing to
Because nobody's
support that with.
Because the ones that aren't going to pay it aren't going to pay it anyway. So why even waste your time finding them? They just keep passing these kids through. It's a class thing that's been going on for forever.
It transitioned somewhere while I was in middle school to high school into that system, which I think would tie right into, would it be No Kid Left Behind?
That was Bush's initiative.
Which would be, if I remember correct, about my mid change. No, that's 2002. That's not it. I think this was something with senior, but I mean that's where I started to see the whole. Yeah, as long as you're not a disciplinary issue, somehow your report card came through at the end of the year and you'd passed.
Mm-hmm.
Just magic.
Yeah.
I had a 3 in that science class. Somehow I passed.
I don't know that that's changed. It stayed like that.
Oh, it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
It absolutely must have gotten worse. It's definitely something that we need to discuss when it comes to around that education.
Mm-hmm. That needs to be in a topic all in itself. That we just talk about that.
Yeah, we need beer and burger discussion with a couple of educators around their thought from being within that system, and where's the opportunities, but how do you change that system? That comes into, I think it'll tie us back to some voting. The adults that are going, my education sucked. Well, great. Pay attention to your local school board positions that are opening up and listen to what the people are saying, and then get your butt to the ballot box. Otherwise, watch your kid go through the same BS. Tie it all the way back, loop it back in.
But that's the thing that you're talking about too, is like they make these promises and then they don't deliver.
They don't know how to deliver.
I mean, we've seen just recently in the past, 2 decades of all the failings of the different school districts.
What they're running into bankruptcy and
Southwest, Edgewood.
We closed an elementary over here on Harlandale.
Southside.
That's the other. I mean, so let's circle that back to. Let's expand this a little bit around educational finance. I live on a more lower income side of town.
Mm-hmm.
The north side just built a $200,000 AstroTurf stadium. I mean, they didn't. It's already been built for 10, 15 years now, but that's what I'm saying. When we look around our property tax and the things that we happen in our city, do you think the bad side of town possibility goes away if property tax is an even distribution across its implementation of of services and things to the entire city? I've lived where I am for almost 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
My in-laws lived here for 30 prior to that. So we have 45 years in this home.
Right.
We got sidewalks 6 months ago and curbs.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is tax dollars and property tax.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on property taxes as a broad application across the entire city as a benefit? Or county?
That one's tough because it really depends. Right now, I don't have anybody in school, so I wouldn't care.
But you're still paying school tax.
I'm still staying for school tax, but I don't care where it goes now.
So that's actually pretty interesting, because I had a similar statement, and I actually reached to a city or a state representative on this question. But so for some other context, local school by me still has automotive class, an actual automotive and shop portion. Mm-hmm. And I think I used cheerleading as an example. At one point, pretty much every school has cheerleading. Not too far from you is one of the culinary schools.
Mm-hmm.
Why does the one down the road not have a culinary institute over here? Can't redirect a kid over there. Not allowed to do that. You're not in the district. You gotta go through some magical things to make that kind of stuff happen. But to tie to something on the educational thing, and like you were saying, it's like I don't have a kid in school, so even though you're still paying it. So I was looking at the fact that if you're of a certain age now, your property tax gets frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So your property tax is frozen for our seniors at age 65. That's great. Those same, and this is, when I say this, you're going to be like, wow, dude, you were apparently a real dumbass at that point. But it's like, why would a person who has no change in their tax be voting on changes in property tax? And so to go back to your conversation, like you were saying with the fact that you don't have kids in schools, I reached out to a guy. I was like, help me clarify this, help me understand it, because it sounds really stupid, and it was in a way stupid maybe for me, but it was a dumb question that I needed to ask it answered. He says, well, it's really simple. Is they still have people who have frozen property tax, just as you still pay a school tax, even though you don't have kids in the area.
Mm-hmm.
By still having that vote and that say of things, you're affecting the future that you're still going to be living around. Did I close that loop back together or not? I might have shot right over it. I think I had a really good idea, and then I hooked out way left and lost control of it.
I wouldn't want to take, since I had kids in the district, I would want my money to go to them. So I want it to keep it where it is. But now that I don't have kids in the district, it can go out to somebody else. I don't care. You can redistribute that. I don't mind that.
Right. So if we look at as we're older now, and our kids, I mean, I don't have too many left in school myself, but the aspect of equally spreading that tax dollar across the entire educational landscape of the city, how is that not a good thing? Because almost every show, you and I have had a good conversation around the fact that we draw a lot of the stuff back to education.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, if you can get a better education on the north side,
mm-hmm.
but you have better living on the south side,
Right.
whether it's less expensive home or less expensive taxes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you just live with family members down on another portion of the town. Why should here are you and I saying the education needs to be better, but here we are saying the north side has the better education system right now, has the better resources, has all that cash from the higher taxes on that side versus down over here. We can't improve education if we're going to pick and choose which school's actually getting the better funding.
But
better funding turning to better payroll, to better teachers, to.
But is it more because of the population? There's more people on the north side.
But the tax.
The neighborhood that I'm in right now is the largest neighborhood in all of San Antonio. Is Heritage.
Right. It's still one of the largest portions of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that, in that same aspect, just by population density, even if that's the argument, we're still elevating one set of children over another versus an equal bring up. I'm not saying we need $200,000, $500,000
so is that
stadium down here. I'm just saying, as we
right.
look at education as one of the key factors to critical thinking and moving forward as a future, we've got to level the educational playing field for all of our kids. Ours, our kids, our neighbors' kids.
Mm-hmm.
So all those aspects play in. How many cops I have on this side of town? What's the budget that goes to my side of town from the police department?
Yeah.
Do I get more budget do you have more of a budget in a more high crime area, or do you have less? So it's that's what I'm referring to about an equal application of funds across the city to balance things out. I'm not trying to, and you know me, I'm not forgiving somebody that, like, hey, you look like you could use a step ladder. Here's one for free. No, we know there's no free lunches.
Education, but I think education is worth it. But I went to school on the south side, middle school, and it really. What got me to where I was are the teachers that I had. There's good teachers everywhere, but I just happened to have really good teachers where I was. Because I was one of those that went from the south side and then I applied to health careers on the north side and I got accepted. So I was able to go to that magnet school. And San Antonio Independent School District would charter a school. They had a school bus for me. Well, not just me, and there were other people there too. And all of the district, they would get picked up and they would get bussed over to health careers.
Right.
And,
yeah, I mean that makes sense with the magnet schools and stuff, but it's
right.
Still that aspect of. If we are going to put a program in one school, culinary things, and I'm trying to look at the balance. Like we were saying, we're talking about critical thinking.
But back when my grandmother was going to high school, you could go to any high school in the city. It didn't matter where you lived. So what if that was in place?
That's, for me, that leads into areas of corruption. We've already seen it. Look at what all the rich hoity-toity celebrities just got away with. I bought my kid into Harvard, but I'm only going to get a slap on the wrist. To me, it just opens that system up to it. Because just as there are good teachers everywhere, there's some scumbag people too. It's like, oh yeah, I can get your kid into a Northside Magnet School, even though he's on the wait list. I'll just get him bumped up for $100K. That's going down conspiracy holes.
Yeah.
But looking at just overall application of a tax dollar equally on each side so that a program that's offered to one student is equally available to another student. And then the change in the education, because even if we change the education and try and make it more dynamic or more fluid, we're still stuck if the financial need to make that happen can only be done by that school over there.
Mm-hmm.
And these can't. So then we're not actually benefiting a society.
Well, then maybe
as a
we need to
whole.
get more state funds to pay for that.
But then the state funds are going to go, like in a current situation, it's X school has X many students, X school gets this much money.
Yes.
So balance the field. We shouldn't be running into a situation where this school has this many students, or we should be looking at a situation where this school has this many students, but the same quality level of education is available here, and now we're going to redraw that line that's going to move more kids from that school to another school not far away.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything that you're getting at school A is available at school B to the same capacity. We're digging into weeds at this point, but I think we hit some decent points. It's still, for us, it comes back to education on a lot of things for critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff is just general life experience as well.
Your mic went out. Yeah, briefly it went out.
Still back?
Yeah, you're back.
What happened?
I don't know.
Dang you, Rectum. I mean, Spectrum.
It was real quick though.
Yeah, must have been my Spectrum stuff. So we're going to come back. I mean, I think education is something that we have to look at.
Yeah.
Youth have got a lot of stuff moving right now. A lot of people have a lot of things, a lot of events right now. So I think neither one of us is alone when we both say that when whatever the next phase, because there's not another side of this. There's not a once this passes. We don't want this to just pass. We want this to be part of the continuum of things moving forward. It's not we get past an event, which seems to have been for a lot of our historical things. But what is the continuum as we move into the next phase of whatever this country is in? What is its best growth? We may never see that best growth, but whatever we need to do
to get us
as adults, to start
to move
to help down that
in
path.
that direction, yeah,
without going into totalitarianism, tyranny.
It's a
anarchy.
fine line. It's a fine line.
It is a line to dance across. All of it. Well, we are going to dig. We have what? Let's get out the early announcement on. We are going to try and either pre-record 2 shows for last week in March.
For
or
the
take a hiatus.
25th and the 2nd.
25th and the 2nd. Yeah. So we're either going to record 2 episodes. We're looking at a couple of things. One of those might be our discussion on how we handle how we handle voting, how we look up some issues. If there's some other topics that are out there that you definitely just want us to dig into a little more, because since they'll be pre-recorded, we'll be able to invest a little more time for research and conversational topics. Drop them in the comments. Shoot anything over from that, and kind of dig that stuff and go forward. Going into next week, we've kind of covered vote. We're going to see what happens with Seattle's CHAZ, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, which I've seen compared to, I'm going to say it completely wrong, but the Mohair Game Reserve, Wildlife Reserve, which was basically occupied at some point and then taken by force, actually resulting in a number of folks who being killed by law enforcement through altercations. So what's going to happen in these, what apparently seems to be Antifa held, but that could be just media BS.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about, we're considering a new segment called Did You Catch the BS, which is stuff that's either being posted to try and be an insightful aggravator, like a 2-year-old file of a 2-year-old video of a cop arresting someone who was resisting, or the FBI agent who getting harassed by cops, but in reality is just has a person of diplomatic immunity, so they can't mess with him anyway, which was also a year-old video, but brought up because it fit the current anger narrative. So we might see those. So as you're perusing your favorite social network, if you find something that's worthy of, hey, did you catch the BS? Feel free to share the story, and we'll kind of bring it up and chat about it.
Yeah.
But I think that's good.
Very cool. Yeah.
We're late and we stayed late. Look at that. We give more.
We give you more.
See,
What we're all about.
this is it.
Very cool. Well, that was a great talk.
Oh, and Ben.
And it was actually not that all over the place, but
No, we did pretty good.
yeah.
We swerved on the road a little bit, but predominantly sober driving.
Yeah. But thanks for checking us out. If you haven't clicked on that subscribe button, please click on that subscribe button and click the notification button to tell you when we come out next. But thanks for checking us out. I'm Pinche.
I'm the Gringo.
See you later, guys.